So welcome everybody, welcome to our AI for Creatives course. We're glad that you could join us today in what is, I'm sure for everybody, a rapid and very interesting journey. The AI is a kind of something that's exponentially growing at the moment, and we're excited to share what we've been learning as part of the Strange Intelligences Lab, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a moment. I just want to introduce you to, first of all, Jared Taylor, who's production in the background. For any of you who have tech issues either during this or watching it later, please contact Jared through support@arfiworld.com. And we're also going to be talking to Kim Newell, all of whom are part of Arfiworld. So let me just get into the presentation. This is part of Strange Intelligences Lab. Strange Intelligences Lab is a long-term research project we have at the moment that investigates the interrelationship between artificial, organic, etheric, creative, collective intelligences, and explores different practice in that area. So one of the things you should know about this workshop that we're doing is that it's actually the result of a huge amount of practice, creative practice that we've been doing. And we're really excited to share that with you as our peers. We are not professing to be running giant data centers around the world in AI. What we're saying is that we've done a lot of work, a lot of research, and we want to make sure that you don't have to do all of that. You can actually see some of the things that we're doing. And so it's really kind of a community peer-to-peer exercise that we're excited to do today. One of the disclaimers around that is obviously, what we're sharing is, I guess, particularly a meta view on what we're doing. So we're interested in giving you the insight or critical reflections that we've learned. One of the challenges you're going to see is that there are hundreds, probably thousands of AI apps being spawned every day. And as I have lots of leads happening through my inbox, there are developments in AI happening within the hour. So you can go into one app and within a few hours, actually the interface has changed because they're all testing things at the same time. So what we're doing is giving you the skills to look, and you'll see a little later on, how to keep ahead of that for yourselves. So what we're going to be doing is starting with a bit of an overview of what AI is, just the basics, and then we're going to be moving into how we've been using it in different parts of creative practice, and you can ask lots of questions at both stages. Some of the ways that you might need to think about protecting yourself or looking behind the scenes or being very conscious around how you're using AI, and again, leaving a little bit of time for questions afterwards. So the first thing I'm going to do is get you to put into the chat or to reflect if you're watching this a bit later. Are you one of those people who are keen? You've been using everything, you've been chat GPTing everything. It's something you've delved and dived into. Is it something you're a little curious about, perhaps? Or is it something where you've been avoiding it like the plague? And we're giving you a little portal into it so you at least know what all the hype is about. So keen, curious, avoiding, or other. Maybe if you have a quick type in the chat, that would be helpful for us to know. So we've got a keen, avoiding. What I notice, generally speaking, is that we tend to see people kind of at either end of the continuum around AI, and I guess that's some of the stuff we're going to address a little bit today. So we've also got a curious as well. So let's start with AI itself. I want to demystify that. For some of you, this may be information that you know already. For those of you who've been avoiding it, I think it's important that you just know some of the basics. And we're giving really a kind of a layperson view on that. So it's kind of accessible in terms of the information. So this is a data center. This is based in Saint-Gelais in Brussels, in Belgium, I should say. This is where AI often is housed. It's kind of the location where The training happens where the large mass of noise and information gets churned into material that you then see when you're using, for example, generative AI tools like Midjourney or ChatGPT or Bing, etc. This consumes about 1 million cubic meters of water, which is about the annual consumption of about 10,000 households in the region. It also uses massive amounts of energy. So one of the things about AI that we need to be aware of is that there is some environmental impact for that. And there's data centers like this springing up all around the world. This is an example of some AI code. So again, it's like grounding it. This is OpenAI source code. One of the things that we need to be aware of around AI is that about 22% of AI professionals are female. We're probably, from the stats that we've researched, people of color are probably less than 10% of the coders. Most coders fit into a particular demographic in terms of what they're churning in if they're from Western development centers. So the code behind it, as always with any code that you're seeing, is always in some ways reflecting the bias or the culture, etc., of the language of the people who are inputting it. So that's a little bit that we'll come back to a little bit later. So a few glossary terms. I'm not going to go through every single one of these. You'll be able to see those and read those a little bit later, or read them as you're watching this recording. You'll be hearing a little bit about generative AI. That's pretty much the main user interface that people who are at grassroots level are using, particularly practitioners, and we'll be showing you some examples of that a little bit later around making video or making image generation. One of the interesting things that's happening right at the moment, and it's happened in the last few days particularly, is this element down at the bottom, which is about levels. At the moment, most people are pretty much using level 1 AI, which is kind of just above or around machine learning. It's around kind of a very, very basic level of input-output, but just at large scale. What we're moving to is a little bit more of reasoning, where AI can actually kind of have slightly more complex problems and draw on different other kinds of complex information in order to give you a response, a reasoned response. And then in the next few months, it's been announced that we're looking at level 3, which is essentially an agent level, which is where there's kind of much more of a sophisticated dialogue and interpretation process that takes place. Sam Altman himself said that he thought that there would be super intelligent AI within 1,000 days, which is within the decade, within the next few years. There's a lot of obviously concerns around the fact that we're not just dealing with a tool. I think we're dealing with an entity in a certain sense. It's an alive, a gradually growing or more conscious thing that's learning alongside us, from us, and we're learning from it. So it's a little bit different than picking up a paintbrush or just using a kind of a flat app for want of a better word. So let's also just bear that in mind. One of the things you should know about us is that we're very balanced. So even though I'm saying some of the things to do with AI, it's more about, it's not like rah, rah, you must all use it in your art practice. And it's also not, we're all going to die. It's a little bit more about, hey, just be aware of these things and be really critically aware around what you're doing around that. So the timeline around AI, just to give you an awareness, it's actually, some people would think, oh my gosh, it's just happened overnight. It actually kind of began in the 50s when there was some speculative ideas around computing and interactive computing. It developed from there. There was what they call summers and winters, where it became sort of quite hyped and everyone was into it, and then suddenly that dropped back down again, like bubbles, bursting bubbles. Around the 90s and particularly the 2000s, it started gaining a lot more momentum. And what we're seeing now is a quite exponential rise in the AI scene. And I'd say within the last 2 or 3 years particularly, there's a massive increase in users. The market has dramatically increased, and the number of users and the number of places where AI is actually being used is probably more than most people would be aware. So I think there's a challenge when people say, well, I don't want to be involved with AI, because I think if you're walking into Pak'nSave, you're watching streaming TV, you're using any search engine, you're using any communication tool, and you're engaging with any large company, you're in an AI essentially driven world at this point. So it's more about how the choices are, or what the choices are that you make in that reality. And I think that's what we want to talk about when we're talking about strange intelligences. So I'm going to do a little pause, and I'm going to see, is there any questions that people have about some of that sort of background information about AI, the kind of grounding stuff? And that can be comments, or you can unmute and just have a quick chat. Not yet, by the look of it. Unless you're typing very slowly, in which case I'll catch you up. It's fine. So it's important to know that it is a little bit, in some ways, it is, you know, it's not a giant beast, an unknown thing that lives in the atmosphere. It does exist in buildings and in code. And at the same time, it's not quite the same as any other kind of digital revolution thing. Not the least the fact that it's learning in a certain kind of way, but also, in my experience, and I'm in my 50s, I haven't seen this degree of change occur with any kind of digital or technological rollout in my lifetime. I haven't seen that. And I was part of the social media change, part of the mobile change before that. The movement from analog to digital happened in my generation, I guess. I haven't seen this level of exponential uptake, and also the level to which AI has rolled out in almost every other system that we have. So it's actually quite important for all of us, particularly those of us working in the creative area, to know that it's hard, avoiding it is a little difficult now. So what are some of the pluses and minuses about this? Pluses are, obviously, there's a huge amount of work that's going into medicine and the health area. If any of you have been to a GP, some of you may have had some tests using AI or been involved in different kinds of programs or data sets or research involving AI and prediction models, for example. There's environmental research that's happening as a result of it. You know, the capacity to bring a huge amount of data into a system and then trawl through that and come up with results and predictive modeling and is far beyond the capacity of what we've been able to see before. It saves time. It saves time in researching. It saves time in generating ideas. It's an amazing tool, as you'll see very soon, for sketching and so forth. And it's really strange, I don't know, for those of you who've tried it already, to type something in. And today, for some of you using an app, it'll be speaking into an app, and have it bring back a result and sound like another person on the other end. For people who've had bereavements, it's being used for them to talk to their loved ones. They're programming in traits, and people are able to speak as if their loved one's still there, which for some is very uncanny, but it's happening. And there also are new generation, as I've mentioned, AI applications where it sounds very, very much like a real person that you're speaking to. So it's very hard for some of these newer models for you to differentiate between a call center person and speaking to an AI agent of some sort. So all of those things are positives and negatives, but I guess some of the positives are we're all using it because it's like magic, right? Some of the challenges around it, as I've mentioned, are around environmental aspects and representation. There can be there's some research that's come out around people becoming quite dependent on it, because it's so quick, they're changing some of the things they've done. And I think for creatives, it's important at this point to think about who are you, what is your practice, and what is your authentic voice? Because it's very easy to, I'll go back to that, it's very easy to be like, oh my God, I can quickly get a post out or an invitation and so forth. The problem with that, as you'll see a little bit later, is that people can tell when it's written by AI and it's not your own voice. So the dependency on the other side of things brings out issues around authenticity. And I think with creatives particularly, and your branding and your communications, that's one thing that I think there's a little bit of backlash around. There is military and surveillance use and bad actors who are in the race to kind of have the most powerful and most sophisticated ways to deploy AI in military and war settings. There's not a lot of ethics and oversight at the moment. People keep saying have your own ethical protocols, but we don't see a lot of organizations actually, except for very large ones, implementing ethics. And in terms of yourself, as you'll see, you actually have to have your own ethics in terms of what you're doing, just as much as you would if you were using analog in painting or any other creative practice. So we'll talk about in a moment around appropriation and corruption. We're also going to talk about hallucinations and some of the power and transparency issues and privacy issues that affect creatives. We'll touch on it at the beginning. We're going to show you some actual things you can do with AI as part of your practice, and then we'll come back to it a little bit later once you've seen some of the tools. Give me a second, Mike. Because we're doing technology and we're talking about AI, I'm wondering whether AI has taken over my system at the moment. So just give me a sec. I just need to move this slide forward. Is everyone still there? Excuse me for a sec. My system's just jammed, so give me a mo. Kim's coming from next door just to give me a hand. One of the things I forgot to say at the beginning is because we're working with technology and we have all sorts of advanced things. We got there. Odds on, it'll go mad on us. Yeah, cool. Thank you. We got back. I have a PhD in creative tech. And every time I do a presentation, something mad happens. Anyone else have that experience? Yes, right. So one of the things we want to talk about, how many of you have heard, just give me a wave as I'm seeing you, about this idea of training things? Everyone keeps hearing about training, right? So one of the challenges is in order for these things to learn, it has to have a whole bunch of things that it learns from. A little bit like when you're a child and your brain's still forming, it's like, here's an apple, eat. This is a good thing. Don't put your hand in the dog's mouth. Don't do that. It's a training system. And so it's like shapes, it's images, it's the way text works, it's the way the actual different languages, structures work, it's styles, any kind of pattern that occurs in humanity. In order for things to reason about that pattern, it needs to actually know those. It needs to kind of consume them. I call AI a little bit like a hungry ghost. It's constantly consuming things so that it can grow more and more. So what's the difference between, let's say you were designing red handbags, there's probably thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of different kinds of red handbags, right? So that the more red handbag types you have, or the more trees you have, the more you're more sophisticated the result will be if you're asked, what is a tree? Or please bring me a tree, or write about a tree. Now, the problem we have around this, though, is that your data is being used to train these systems most of the time, whether you like it or not. So, for example, if any of you are on LinkedIn, I don't know if those who have LinkedIn accounts, you probably aren't aware that your LinkedIn data is being trained unless you opt out of it in the background, for example. For those of you using YouTube data is being trained. Whole professions, including Lionsgate, for example, productions, all of the movies within that have been handed over for data for training AI. So if, you know, and I think repositories of libraries of writing, different kinds of online image systems are being scooped up in this area. And there's an issue with that when you then find that it's not the same as, oh, I'd like to see Kelly's paintings, please, and it goes into a you know, YouTube yet, or sorry, Instagram, and pulls it back. It's not doing that, but it's certainly referencing anything that puts into it. It references it back out again, and so the only way really you can not have that happen is A, in some cases, not use an app at all. Or B, that you actually pay to get into a different level up so that your data is kind of protected from being trained. And that's why I put this slide up. We have a team account on ChatGPT, for example, which stops our data being trained. So I can put in different stuff about our accounts and various other things. And I know that's not going to be churned out somewhere else, especially if we're doing innovation and using certain words and certain combinations and so forth. But you know, if you don't have the money to pay your way out of these systems, as you'll see a little bit later, you do need to be aware and keep well up to date with the privacy settings of any online platform that you put your work. That includes YouTube, that includes Instagram, that includes, as I said, LinkedIn, which I only found out the other day. Most of those systems now, they're opting people in without necessarily letting people know overtly. So keep a sharp eye on your privacy settings, everybody. The other thing about it is around appropriation. This is a very, very bad example of, you know, the prompt for this, and a prompt is where you type in something to one of these platforms, typed, and soon it will be just spoken. Please provide a Māori design involving a cat. We've done this to be provocative and also to show you that there's an issue around cultural appropriation in AI. And also I have seen people doing courses saying, create Māori designs using AI. I find that problematic. Certainly people I speak to from Te Ao Māori find it problematic. It's potentially culturally corrupting on many different levels, spiritual as well as cultural and so forth. So appropriation, particularly cultural appropriation, is a real biggie, but also just appropriating other people's work. And certainly I have seen examples in LinkedIn and other places where people are proudly showing that they've screenshot people's work from Instagram and put it into AI and said, could you give me some examples of how I can do this? For us, that's actually ethically a no-no. It's the same as going to someone's exhibition in a gallery and saying, well, I like their painting, I think I'll just make that myself and sell it, right? But I think it's also, I guess, getting all of you to think, what work are you putting online? Are you checking the systems in place regularly around those areas? And like any tool or anything we put in the public these days, what are the conscious choices you're making about that? We'll talk a little bit later about some of the things people are doing around it. But at the moment, you know, it is possible. We strongly recommend, as part of what we're saying today, please don't screenshot other people's work and use it for training. We are going to show you how you can upload images, but there's ethical ways of doing that. And in the end, it's actually not your authentic voice, but certainly it's an exciting opportunity to put your own work in a safe way into the system and then generate sketches and ideas and so forth. And we'll show you how to do that too. So just have a bit of a think about appropriation. In the back of Midjourney, for those of you who haven't used Midjourney or have, this is an example of some New Zealand artists whose work, at the push of a button, you can recreate your work in the style of. It's problematic if these people are not out of copyright in terms of technical copyright, which is, you know, at least 70 to 100 years past their death date. The other thing about AI is around the idea of hallucinating. I call it outright lies or just making stuff up. Hallucination is also another way of saying it's just not that accurate. When you're using things like ChatGPT for research, for example, this is an actual screenshot of some interactions I had with it where it made up references. And so you think, this is amazing. I don't have to go into Google and type it all up in front of me. I can just go into here and say, could you write me a blog and give me all the references for it in Chicago style? And then it gives you the references. Your eyes are bleeding. You're thinking, this is the most I'll be a millionaire. I can just churn this stuff out. I'm an influencer overnight. The problem comes is when you cross-reference this information and find out all of it is lies. The references are made up, the contents are made up, the statistics are often made up. And the biggest issue around this is sometimes people are thinking, well, why am I getting a lawyer? Why am I going to the doctor? When I can now become an expert in these topics? Our strong recommendation from our own research in the lab is don't do or rely on information that you can't cross-correlate from your own experience. So if you can't cross-correlate it, if you aren't kind of at a level higher than it, or at least have enough experience in it, don't go out of your zone and start imagining that you're going to get great legal advice or give advice, for that matter, that's not in your area of expertise, because you won't be able to then critique the information that's given. Whenever I'm using it for research, I can at least go, well, that doesn't seem right from my experience or knowledge, and then check it. I at least know where to check it too, right? So don't go out of area of expertise, and hallucinations is one aspect of that. It also hallucinates images, but that's less of an issue than I think text particularly. So in a moment, what we're going to do is we're going to go into a little bit about writing, and we're also going to be talking about image generation. Kim's going to, so writing, Jared's going to give you some hints and tips around writing. Kim's going to be looking at image generation, video and animation work, 3D modeling, and some audio stuff. And then we're also going to have a little bit of time for you to ask, some questions around that. But I'm just pausing at the moment because I've gone through quite a bit of stuff. We're half an hour almost in now. We're going to take a short break for everyone to kind of go. But I just want to, particularly for those of you, if you can take off audio muting and just ask, are there any questions or feedback so far, things you want to ask, just so we can also just kind of pause and ground ourselves before we go to the next stage.
I don't have a question, but I'm really enjoying it so far. Thank you.
That's fine. I think this is rich context. So I think the main thing I want to say to everybody is this afternoon, we're going to next we're going to show you some apps. In a few days' time, those apps could change the interface. So the thing about it is, again, the best artists are the ones who are critically reflective, personally very conscious and self-aware of their own voice, and thirdly, extremely discerning. So if you can think about those three things as we go into the next phase, then we'll be looking at this is a tool. It's also a very clever tool. So let's use those aspects underneath your practice rather than just take it at face value. So we're going to take a short break.
Hi, everyone. Writing. So maybe just pop in the chat if you've used maybe two things that you may have experienced. One, if you've used something like a ChatGPT or similar tool to generate some writing, or if you've observed things that have been written and been noticing that perhaps, that question pops up. Was this actually written by a human, or was this generated by AI? And increasingly we are seeing, and it's almost to the point of embarrassment, that we're increasingly seeing people using AI tools to generate writing, and we're seeing it come out regularly in newsletters. we're seeing it in emails, we're seeing it in articles, we're seeing it in blogs, we're seeing it in many different places. And the most common thing that we're identifying is that there's a lot of kind of giveaway words often, and the structure of the AI text, whilst often, depending on the tool, quite formal and accurate, there's often some giveaway words. So whenever you're reading anything and you come across words like dive and delve and deep and similar sort of words that feel like that, there's a really good chance that it's been AI generated. So we ourselves have actually used these AI tools to actually do a lot of writing, but we use it in a really particular way. And what we really encourage people to do if you're using it for writing is a few key tips. So one is work out what it is that you need the AI to help you with. So for example, from my own personal approach in using it for writing, often my head is filled with all of the things I want to say, and the difficulty can sometimes be in how you actually structure it and piece it together in order to get some written output. So the way that I often use it is to just actually make some really rough, lots of bullet points, just putting in strings of text and using it in a very multi-iterative way to generate a draft of a piece that I feel reflects, what the ideas were in my head and what it is that I want to output. The example that we've got on the screen is another alternative way of using it, whereby we can take the transcripts from, for example, podcast interviews that we've done with people. We can then take hundreds and hundreds of words, put it into AI and say, pull out the key points that were discussed in that podcast. Now we've listened to the podcast, we know what's in the podcast, but it's actually taking hundreds and hundreds of words and condensing it down. And then in an iterative way, we can then create like a really good summary. Now, we wouldn't just cut and paste this and then use this text as is. So the next big trick is to use one of or both of a couple of different tools. So there's lots of tools available where what you can actually do is to humanize text. So you can then cut and paste the text into a humanizing tool, and what it will then do is to then give that text a more human feel to it. You can also use tools like Grammarly, particularly the paid Grammarly version, which is not just an all-round awesome tool for writing and grammar and spell checking and suggestions in your writing, but Grammarly is also really good at being able to give the tense and tone and feel of your writing something that's closer to what you might actually, feel really comfortable with. And then, we always suggest at the end of the writing pieces to read it out, make sure that it actually, feels and sounds like a voice that you're actually comfortable with, and get to know the sorts of giveaway words that might trip up. There are actually tools that can then do checks over text, and that can actually give you with a percentage level of accuracy whether it feels that it's kind of 99%, 90%, 50% chance that it's actually been written by AI. So they're probably the key things about writing. We could probably do another 2-hour workshop on writing itself, particularly in how you might be able to construct big pieces and what the challenges are. Maggie's already mentioned challenges around being very careful about references and the fact that spurious references can be included. So we'll leave it there. If you do have any other questions about writing, but part of the reason why getting familiar with writing using AI tools is that, as you'll see with what Kim is going to go through, is that sort of mastering prompts and being able to use the text interface to create prompts for then the visual stuff that we'll be looking at is actually really fun to do. It takes a bit of time and practice to get comfortable in how to use the prompt interface, and that can then lead into some of the really creative, wonderful outputs that Kim is going to take us through now.
Cool. Thank you, Jared. So, I thought I'd start on GPT, and I have already uploaded an image, which is this lovely image which actually Maggie took in our garden of one of the flowers which popped up in spring, and we used it for another project, so it's been in Photoshop and background taken out, but it's irrelevant for this. It's nice and handy. So what I have done is in ChatGPT, I've uploaded and I am asking ChatGPT for an image prompt. And also this, I don't know, is good practice or not, and might be paranoia, but often myself and Maggie and others I know often think and be very polite to AI and ChatGPT, just in case it's got memory, and it's also probably nice having that rapport with it as well. And try not to be kind of angry at just in case it does remember or learn from us. But at this stage, it probably isn't. But later down the track, I think it probably will. So yeah, I should probably get that generating as I talk. So going to attempt to kind of do everything live as we go, and some of the results might be a little bit hit and miss as well, which is part of it as well. So we don't always get what we want straight away. So it's given us a lovely description of this. Since in ChatGPT, I might just get it to generate an image here. I I'll just see if I can just make it bigger. I maybe won't read it out because I might say it wrong, but I'll just pause that for a second. So yeah, often it can be quite flamboyant in the language it uses as well, which is quite nice, and also problematic at times as well. So I'll just ask for an image. So and I'll excuse my spelling now. I am a visual artist and quite dyslexic, so sometimes I do spell wrong, and hopefully auto corrects or other things. So yeah, can you make an image? So with most AI, it's actually been processed in the data centers, and that's partly because it requires lots of power, and lots of it can't happen at home. So that's a kind of a lovely kind of image. What I might also do, which might be different, it might be the same. Oh, yeah, no, that's the same description. Going to pop into Midjourney. So there are a number of different programs for generating images, and Midjourney is one of our favorite. And it's both good and bad, is that it's been trained on lots of data, including artists and stuff, which is problematic, but there are other ways around that as well, and it gives quite good results. It does uh, cost some money to use. Um, This is, and when I've used it personally, $10, this is US a month, and just give it a try, which is a quite nice way. And what we've also done, I guess, is before we use any software like Midjourney, is to check its terms and services, which Maggie will probably talk a little bit about, and I might as we go ahead. And to summarize the terms and service is that technically the user owns the copyright and can use the images how they want, and that Midjourney have got the right to basically broadcast the image. In the terms and services, it doesn't actually say if they use your data for training, and I'm kind of a little bit suspicious and a little bit careful about that. And also, there's a lot of talk about if companies are actually true to what they say in their terms of services about that, if they do mention that. Another thing in particular with Midjourney is that everything you make generally is public, so someone could see what you've done and copy exactly what you've done and come up with very similar results. And I guess we decided to go for a pro plan, which allows you to go into sleuth mode, which means that we can generate stuff which other people can't see. So if you're doing stuff commercially, it's quite good, and you aren't sharing all of your secrets. So it's I guess with any software, you might dabble in it, but you want to be careful with what you put in, and especially when you start using it for your own practice or commercially, you definitely want to know if you've got right to use it, and all of those types of elements, and if they're using your data, or etc. Which is use that. So back into create. Cool. Some weird creatures I was doing earlier. So for now, I will just use the same prompt that we used in ChatGPT, and we'll see what we generate. So yeah, so technically we've used photos, you could use your own artwork. Again, probably a little bit hesitant in like putting everything up and going crazy. So far I've just kind of put up work which if it does leak out into the world, I kind of see it as public domain. So if I don't put anything too precious up there, or do stuff which is kind of experimental, or in some cases photos document of rather than your own artwork. So yeah, just thinking about that, and I guess it's up to you to kind of decide on that element. Cool. So gives us always generates 4 images. And then for purposes of this, I might just generate some variations. So as I'm doing this, it'd be awesome if someone can in the chat suggest maybe a prompt that we could try in Midjourney, and it could be something like a dancing rat in the style of DALL-E, or so it could be an object doing an action, and in the style of an artist you might know. So if a few people can put that in the chat, and then I'll put that in. And if no one does, hopefully Jared or cool. Thank you, Nari. As you might notice, and it's not shown too well, but often you'll notice that the images are coming into focus as it gets further down the track. And technically what AI is doing is that it's taking noise, and then it's going through a neural network, and then it's sorting it out into what it think it should be. So ballerina, is that looks kind of similar to the style? It's yeah. What do you think, Nairi? Do you want to? Yeah.
Was the
So
first ballerina missing a leg?
yeah. So very likely it's probably hiding. Talk about hallucinations. I think hallucinations happen all the time in image generation as well. And if you are like myself and like mad, weird, surreal things, then it's awesome. But if you're a purist, you'll notice lots of weird things. And also, that pose at the moment, you notice that her hands are doing something weird. I'm sure a ballerina probably wouldn't be holding her hands like that. I don't know if she could hold her leg up that high so you couldn't see it either. So it is kind of incorrect. And also, yeah, this one was also missing a leg as well by the looks. And that's possibly because lots of the images that it's trained on probably looks like that, and that's how AIs interpret it as well. So it's yeah, it's kind of explorative sometimes to see how it works. So I think we should try another style. I'll bring up this website, which is called uh, well, it's a Midjourney library input output, and it's got hundreds of styles which are definitely inside in your there's got genres through to artists, and it's kind of a reference also. I mean, it's actually trained itself on actual people on Instagram and stuff, so it's also problematic in that regards. So around that, if you're doing it for yourself and just trying, it's probably interesting to see what the results are, but I'd be very careful of what I publish and what I share from those results. And there's also the setting here, which is public domain. So technically, that is stuff it's been trained on, which is outside of copyright. So stuff which is was it 75 years after the death of a author and other types of things. I wouldn't take it for granted all the time, but it's definitely so. I'm just trying to think of it, and also there's a kind of ethics around this as well. So, do we want to do Samoan art as a ballerina, or these different types of indigenous masks? I would be very hesitant in doing that, but people are. Uh,
And how have you primarily been using it in terms of your own creative practice?
so, I have generally been using it as a research tool to generate ideas and also to get visual references. Um, And I'll give some demonstrate. Maybe I'll show my stream in a second. I'll just do this, and no, I can just plot them by no, style of. So um, lots of people in the design industry have also been quite excited about AI, but often they have commercial clients. So often they use it as at this stage in the stage of generating ideas, which you can do really quickly. Oh, they've all got one leg as well. There must be a ballerina trait. Um, And then, you know, imagine a big company who's making a big advert for a big corporation. They don't want to be sued and they want to be all legit. So they kind of do lots of ideas and then they would go into full production and you'd be inspired by what they learned and kind of produce everything from scratch. Um, from a personal point of view, I guess I am into surrealist and kind of weird things. So I have been mashing things together. I'll just bring over my personal account of Midjourney. The famous monkey fly. And we'll do a demonstration in a second, but I have literally grabbed an image from archives.org, which has a whole lot of kind of vintage and old books, which are all out of copyright. And in this case, I've clear cut it. Oops. In another image I generated in Midjourney, so it's kind of self-referencing itself of some flies, which also came from a similar source. Yeah. And what I'll do, I think I can regenerate it using that content. So copy prompt.
So you can actually put two images at the same time in Midjourney, which is kind of an interesting thing, which it can then mash them, yeah?
Yeah, so I can't do it in that account just because I have been spending way too much money on different subscriptions, and my personal account I closed down for that, which I think closed down a few days ago. But I'll do some examples up here as well and then show some. So yeah, I guess that's kind of a warning with all of this. Most systems want subscriptions and money, and you're looking at anywhere between 10 or $8 to which gives you a few options to $35. So that's like $60 or $70 a month. So another practice I've been doing is getting an AI tool for a month and just kind of using it, abusing it, testing it out, and getting the most out of it, and so I know what it can do. Okay, so I will got a pre-prepared monkey, and I'll use the flower that we got before. So I'm just literally using two images, and I will mash them together to see what happens. And that will take a little bit of time. I'll
And
just
so what we're suggesting, I guess, in amongst all of this is that you're iterating, ideally in a protected environment, iterating and gathering ideas from within your own practice. So using your own images or things that you've generated to sketch out ideas and so forth. I mean, of course, people are generating it to make stuff to sell, but in this instance, I think a lot of people are really interested in using it for practice.
Yeah, I see it's a great kind of research tool, and I am actually at this stage very hesitant in what I put out into public or sell, or even I guess use in performances. So I'm doing a performance for in a few weeks' time for Fringe, and at this stage I've decided not to use any AI stuff because I don't know how it fits with my brand, but I'm being totally inspired by what I'm generating and doing. Just show you this one, for example, this is just a weird little droid doodle I did, and I can put that into the mix, and it kind of got this weird monkey flower creature. But if we go back up here, this is a flower and monkey mixed together, but quite, might go for the one on the far left. So yeah, could probably spend forever in Midjourney doing stuff, but I think the next stage is I'll take this image and we'll turn it into some video. So I'll just download it. Are there any questions at this stage that anyone has or is interested in? Um, Zoom, no, all good. Cool.
I'm curious that you use both Midjourney and ChatGPT. Which are you finding most successful for image-based work?
So, but images are a lot more realistic in Midjourney. They're quite stylized in ChatGPT, which uses DALL-E. So when I first kind of started doing some experiments, I kind of used ChatGPT quite a lot, and it was quite good at generating some ideas, and they were a lot more graphic. But I'm finding the results out of Midjourney are a lot more artistic is probably a better word. Partly because I have been trained on artists, which is, I guess, also problematic. So there's a number of different types of video tools and techniques, and the technique that we're looking at the moment generates an image into video, and this particular tool called Krea AI I personally quite like because as you see it playing, it turns an image into video, and then it kind of loops it. So in my world, I can use it multiple times, which is kind of interesting. So as an experiment, I will upload our little monkey flower that we did earlier. Then it's always good to just to scout around to see what the settings are. So it's 16:9, which is like video. I've told it to loop. Motion is, I guess, you can play with. And on the far left is duration, which is 4 seconds. So you can make it longer. And there's different styles. And film and render are probably best, where animation has a very strong style and experimental makes it quite distorted. So I guess if you play around, you can do that. So if I generate that. So in the AI space, some of the big players also doing image stuff as well, like Adobe. And they've got a system called Firefly for images, which I find is quite stylized. So I don't use it a lot, and it looks like everything's been designed. Oh, but it's quite weird, isn't it? And they're also about to go into the video space. I've announced that, but it hasn't been publicly released yet. So it's kind of done a first pass of this, and now it's just adding detail. And maybe it doesn't happen as much as it does with writing, but find that you don't always get, well, it's very hard to get what you want out of it. So if you're kind of open, it kind of gives you a lot more possibilities, as well as there's often lots of trial and error. And in reality, as an artist, if you're quick at making work, it can be sometimes as quick to make stuff as well. It's not always like, oh, we have this marvelous thing, but that's kind of a cool weird creature. Don't know if I want to use it or not. Another thing, I guess, in Afi world, which we're kind of being concerned and thinking about, is that when we generate these things which we bring into the world, is we are literally bringing them into the world. So especially if we put on social media or they, I mean, it's kind of making it alive. So being aware of what we choose to give energy to and not. And also, I guess part of that is to do with what we generate in the first place. And again, yeah, that's probably a good example of kind of hallucination as well. That's random feet and flowy. So we'll move on to another tool. So we can use images, and maybe we'll start off with a similar image. And this kind of requires a prompt as well. This tool is called Pixverse. One reason I started using it was because it was fairly cheap, and some of the results are okay. Monkey flower. This is one I did earlier today and tried to put prompt in and did nothing. Then this is another one I did with a similar prompt, and it didn't know what to do with my image, and then it just added a monkey to it. So it's kind of a little bit random. That one kind of worked. This is an image from a book, and I said a monkey that flies, and I was hoping it would move its wings, and instead it's kind of grown wings. It's kind of fun and exciting to see what comes out, and which is also really problematic with all of this, which we haven't really mentioned yet, is that AI can be quite addictive because you don't quite know what the results are. So it's a bit like gambling in lots of ways. And I have found myself like getting overexcited or staying up late, just keep on plugging away to see what would come out of the system. And I think that's going to be more of a problem in the future as well with people. Oh, this is one with a prompt. Really cute monkey. I'd probably never use it, but it's okay. Let's see if a running monkey. It's going very slow. That's kind of weird. But anyway, at the moment, it's kind of done it as a square. If I uploaded an image which was a right size, it would have done it per a little bit better, but we won't go into that. So, got that. I would like another prompt, please, which I will do without an image, which is another way that we can generate video, which are quite a few different tools. So, could we have would someone like to write a prompt of maybe an object doing an action of some type?
Someone who hasn't had a go yet, if you could type it in, that way Kim can actually cut and paste from the chat.
And again, yeah, it can be very so if it's very descriptive, then it has less chances to go astray, and if it's it's a simple thing, then I guess there's a whole lot of decisions which the AI is making for us, which can be exciting as well, because we might not know exactly, in this case, a lamp, what the lamp's going to look like, how it's going to move, etc. But that's also very exciting as well.
One of the things for some of you who are working in kind of a non-moving space anyway, like you're kind of making 2D practice or analog practice, is it is actually interesting to see what happens when you animate or move or change the shape or the materiality of what you're doing. So it can be a form of research, I think, and that's one of the things we keep encouraging people to think about. How do you explore or expand your practice by experimenting in different modalities or different dimensions, etc. We've got a few other ones here, Kim, as well. But
Yeah. I'm just feeding them in at the moment.
What kind of computer power do you need to do some of this, Kim? Maybe while we're waiting for that to generate.
So technically, lots of these systems which I'm demonstrating today, and that as artists we use, they are using the computer power of our actual computers. So we could be doing this on a 20-year-old computer, something that's got a browser, essentially, that works well, and an okay internet connection. If And there's a whole scene where you can kind of have the AI models which live on your computer. You need quite a powerful computer when you start doing that, and like a really good what we call graphics card and lots of memory. And you're probably looking at a setup, maybe a few $1,000s. You might be able to get something which is okay, but $8,000 or $9,000. And the ones and the hardware that they're actually using in the data centers, and which in the main part is a graphics card, which does all the processing because it does it in parallel. You're looking at like $600,000 just for one graphics card, so it's kind of big money.
But these are accessible for those people who, as you said before, have got basic setups, right?
Yeah. So Kelly, a lamp moving across the room. So it's decided that the camera's moving. We might imagine that the lamp itself might be working. Tracy, the waterfall weaving Akashic patterns. I can't see any patterns, but it's given it a try. So, but yeah, it doesn't always do what you want, and sometimes it's gives you beyond what you want, and every now and again it gives you exactly what you want. So it's yeah, that does actually require lots of investment and time as well to get what you want, and you kind of get a style as well.
And would you just be using this program to make something that's more extended in terms of moving image?
So I don't know exactly what you're saying, but within some of these software, sometimes you can make them longer lengths, but I would basically take into a video editing program and add to it, or you might generate a series of videos which then you add together. So you, for example, you couldn't make a whole movie with one prompt. You would make the different scenes and then edit them together and choose what. So maybe it's similar to uh, if you were filming for something, you would go out and film a whole lot of footage. So, and then you'd come back and edit. So, in this world, you could spend, a few days generating a whole lot of video clips through the prompts and then putting them together and also seeing how they work, for example. So the next thing going to go on to is having a look at 3D, which is another. And I might uh, go to, again, you can just use images to generate 3D. So I will upload a weird little creature that we generated before. And this tool's called Meshy, and it's probably used in the game design industry. One of the reasons I ended up using it quite a lot was that they had a special, so I got a year for like 100 or $70 US. And there's a few other very similar tools. Not maybe I'll just show a few things as it comes up. I was doing some testing for today, and I was imagining of doing this lovely, similar to what I've got here, but I had a butterfly and a flower together. I think it would generate really lovely images. And you can see the image up on the left, and it ended up making this thing which is very demonic, which I won't leave up there for too long, but that was really disturbing. Weird little monkey I did earlier, yeah. Still a little bit distorted. And there's some flowers, which, oh yeah. So these could be taken into other kind of 3D software and used in different ways and rendered and into games. As we've experimented with also 3D printing out. So let's see what our result is. It's done it. It's just weird. Anyway. There, and we can also generate text to 3D. So again, in the comments, if people want to type down maybe an object they would like to see in 3D, and it can be fairly descriptive. And as a test, I'll just see if it's in my I use the I'll just use the prompt from ChatGPT from the start. So as you see, as in my practice, probably interfacing with different AI tools together to get different results to see how they work. And using ChatGPT to generate prompts.
Has anyone got a 3D object they would like to generate? Perhaps something that's a motif in their own work, for example. Just if you could type it in, doesn't need to be, you know, mega long, but it'd be nice to have something from someone. Saturn belt around a solar eclipse.
Cool. So I'll look at a
We've
few.
got two there, so let's go with those two.
Yeah, and I'll put them in.
Saturn's belt, by the way. I think we're going into, Sharon, I think we're using the word belt may bring up something unusual, but let's see what happens.
And some of these results totally rely on how the models that the people have generated the software have trained their models on. So they might know what some of the languages and other things they will not know, and other tools might have a better understanding as well. And the probably, as Maggie said before, it's all of these tools are rapidly changing, and that the interface to this tool was totally different to what I was using last night with text to image. So it is today it's generating the model and then the texture, and last night I was doing the whole thing at once. So then it might be different tomorrow, and it might go back. So it's kind of live, and there's also lots of bugs that happen as well.
While we're generating those, Kim, do you want to say a little bit about how you've been, we haven't probably got time to go into it in too much, but around 3D printing and taking these models and making them physical again?
Yeah, so I guess with some of the models, we've made animations out of them, but we've also 3D printed. So with our theme that we've been playing with is monkey fly or monkey mosquito. So for example, Tracy, one of these trees, in theory, you could export it out and then you could print it on a 3D printer.
And Kim, we've got a question. Can you take these into ZBrush before printing?
Yes, you can. And also the models won't necessarily be perfect. So technically you might have to do some work, but you can export them or just for, I say geeks or people who might know a little bit about 3D is that you can actually export them out as different formats. And we can also, we'll texture that one.
For those who don't use ZBrush, I guess the equivalent is something like Blender or Maya or one of those programs.
Yeah. So Blender is a free program which allows you to do things. And at times I've had things which have been floating in space and have big holes in them and that type of thing. So sometimes, often with AI at the moment, it kind of gets 80% there, but you might have to touch it or do more to it to make it usable as well. That will probably get better as we go forward. Oh, so that's texturing. We'll have a look at, don't know why the trees, we do that. It's stored at the moment. with flowers from my prompt. Saturn spout. It's got different. It's kind of got the basic concept. I don't know if it's Saturn or not. That's it. But and if it's got two bouts, but yeah. And also you could use it as a starting point as well. And then like take out off one bout or add more. Address, and I've generated a texture for that, which I think should pop up. And then and then one of the Drew trees. So it's got mushrooms. Got lots of stuff floating in space. Yeah, so this is always improving as well. And it's way better than what it is. I mean, that one's probably might be printable. Cool. So the last thing that I was going to quickly look at is looking at also sound as well. And I did line up a whole lot before and they aren't showing up. So I will see if I can randomly find. Presume you can hear that.
Data in roots and servers blend. 3 hours pulse in binary, they depend. Green soaked sunlight, text tend to serenade. Life in pixels in harmony to raid. The digital garden, secret lullaby. Wires and waves under the same.
So that was generated probably with a very simple prompt, which is a song about the Internet of Things interacting with with plants on 3 islands, and then I put in the style. And it was yeah, kind of uncanny. So this tool is called Udio, and there's a few other very similar tools, and it can be a little bit hit and miss. But should we quickly from the audience get yeah, so yeah, Suno's another that Sharon just mentioned, which she's used in her work. A very quick description of a song in the comments. It could be say a song about bees.
Maybe you could play another one while we're waiting for a prompt, Kim.
And I was trying to like the ones which I played, but I'll just randomly play. And if it's like really bad, pop rock, forgive me.
Digital Vines is lovely.
Oh yeah. This is a similar one. I have got them liked over here. Oh, this will do it. Cool. I'll play this one. So this is I think the very first time I used and I was trying to get a song about our cat and Maggie.
I feed your Sheba soft purse, bright eyes. Watch her dance neath the moon's gentle hue. There's grace in her step with each playful move. And all the while, Maggie, I'm loving you. I craft our world, our space, with our Sheba, snoozing on our sunlit room.
Thank you for playing that, Kim. We've got
Pleasure.
a couple of ones here. A song about Whangarei Bridge and its geese, and we've got a heavy metal song about drifting on an ice float, and a song about Mount Everest in an electronic style.
Yeah, so I've got that and we can also say if we want lyrics or not. So I mean, lyrics are kind of fun, so we'll probably keep them in for now. And you can actually go into subgenres and stuff, but I think it just makes up some subgenres for us if it thinks that, for example, electronic might end up doing certain type of house or something. But let's wait and see. So that should be generating.
While we're waiting, is there anyone here who thinks they might do music as part of what they're doing as part of their practice? Yeah. I mean, obviously, we're kind of in the time that we've got giving you a first pass on a few different things. So there's a lot of experimentation you can do in terms of your own lyrics and kind of iterating on it. And also, obviously, taking that snapshot and then taking it somewhere else to add things in terms of layers, or using it as a sample within a larger musical piece, for example.
Just put these in.
Like many things, Mary, you were saying about creating soundtracks. It's very hard, I think, still at the moment with most AI creative interfaces to use only that. So what we've been working with is the idea of workflows. So starting in one workflow and then taking it into other different kinds of systems that you're using to kind of upscale it or integrate it. And yeah, and Sharon, yes, experimenting and using it, for example, as sound loops, etc., as well. I mean, there is a difference between someone who's playing it live versus AI generated stuff, but certainly in terms of sampling, in a weird way, this is one of the ways in which AI is good for IP, because there's so many creatives who rip off other people's samples. You can just make your own samples now, right?
Summer of Dreams. Let's have a I might still be generating. I find that. Oh, yeah, no.
So this is a song.
Climbing to the peak, we're soaring high. Valleys far beneath, touch the sky. With every step we breathe, hearts ignite. Through the endless snow, before the light. Mount Everest, rising strong. Where we belong. Mount Everest.
It generates two versions of each one, but I'll just quickly go to one of each for time.
Walking to the Wonderite Bridge today, where the geese they gather and play. Underneath the clear blue sky, their wings they lift, and so do I. Over the water, sky so bright. With every hunk, it feels so right. The bridge holds stories old and new. With every step, I'm feeling true.
So
Wow.
you can put in your own lyrics as well, and you can also, with the latest version, you can do a 2 or 3 minute song that it can generate the whole thing. So just doing the 30-second version, and you can also generate just music. Don't know if this picked up the style. It looked like it did, but and it does have. So everyone must be slightly woken up now after that. So I guess not a word of warning, but there's lots of exciting possibilities you can do, and I think it's really good to stay critical with what you actually use your practice for and what you put out into the world. So, and that at times some of this AI, when you first get into it, you're kind of overexcited and it's all shiny. but everyone else might be doing the same thing, or you might also be doing kind of in a slightly inappropriate way as well. So it's just good to always have a criticality of how you use it. I mean, what you do in your own time, it's good to experiment and play around, but you don't obviously show everything you do. But I guess there's that choice that you make when you do release it into the world. So yeah, so that's just a few tools I've been using, and there's many more, and probably just some of the thinking and processes of how and pitfalls of using them as well.
Generally speaking, in terms of protection for artists who are actually using their work in it, just coming back to that point, I am mindful that some of you are already using systems like Pixie, or if you're a writer, you're using Google Alert to see if text comes up at certain times. Some of you are using watermarks. That's a kind of an older system. With AI, one of the new things to be aware of is there are systems people are developing. Glaze is one of them. We've tried using Glaze. If any of you hear about Glaze as a system, it's designed for people to use to embed or artifacts essentially into their images to stop them being uploaded and trained without your will into AI. We've had hit and miss around it. It's hard to get a really accessible version. You have to have quite powerful computers to use the version they've got. But let's imagine that there'll be ways in which this becomes more and more accessible, where people have the choice to kind of opt out of AI on their own terms rather than through the terms and conditions of different practice. And speaking of terms and conditions, Kim alluded to it earlier, Midjourney, one of the things we want to reiterate in terms of digital literacy is just to please always check the terms and conditions of any system that you're using. That's one of the main takeaways from this. Don't just go, right into it. Most of the time, to be honest, you need to pay to protect yourself. And most of the time, you're not told if your data is being trained on. So we have to be quite proactive as consumers on any platform that we're using at the moment, right across the board. If you're going online, regularly check all of that material. In New Zealand, the other thing to be aware of around protection is that we have particular laws that are rapidly evolving in this area. So if you want to have the most recent law around, or the most recent thinking around privacy issues, then have a look in the Privacy Office. I've got some links in there that you can go to a little bit later. Those are mainly for organizations who are dealing with privacy, but privacy is one of the bigger issues. Using apps that you see online and they go, oh, we promise to give you amazing animation or 3D, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of cloning that's happening. So it looks like an AI app, but you're going in and it's actually weirdly a phishing tool. So be careful of stuff that you're seeing come through social media. Do a little bit of verification before you actually put your details in, as you would with anything, because there's so many apps coming out by the day that it's hard sometimes, if they look similar to other things you've used or heard about, to think whether those are actually legit apps as well. Also, be mindful that sometimes what we do when we're testing is we set up alternative email addresses that we don't mind if they go a bit awry or we get spammed from them. It's a bit like shopping on Temu, like use an email address just for Temu. So think about a little bit of the protocols around that. Copyright New Zealand also is keeping up to date, relatively speaking, and I think quite well around the AI scene. So if you go to Copyright's site, there's a fact sheet around AI. And one of the things that's interesting in New Zealand is that New Zealanders hold the copyright for computer-generated work. In other countries, that's not the case, which means that if you generate something that's got AI in it, you don't actually have the copyright to then sell that commercially. So you can go to town selling stuff on Etsy in New Zealand. You might not be able to do that in other countries. You might also be noticing, if you're going into social media to promote your work, that they're increasingly asking you to note if you have AI content in that. Because they will at a certain point start scouring the system to put AI content into different algorithms, et cetera, to kind of make the system as pure, for want of a better word, than otherwise. So just be mindful around the choices you're making around the social media content as well. In terms of next steps, one of the things that we're doing is we're building quite a lot of course content out around going in depth with certain aspects of AI. For those of you who don't know a little bit about Awhiworld, our research is in the space between sort of art, science, technology, spirituality, and social change. And so we're kind of burrowing down into different areas, particularly through the Strange Intelligences Lab. So that includes, for example, burrowing down into that 3D space and the workflows that happen between real life and non-real life, looking at the spaces around video and so forth. And also we do a lot of things like projection mapping or augmented reality. So it's taking that content and putting into those areas. One of the things that probably all of you have heard is your practice, particularly if it's in that multimodal area, is only really as good as the content. Like you might be using lots of shiny platforms, but if the content that you're generating is not so nice, then you might be using the most sophisticated setup, but in the end, it's not going to look good. Another thought is also we're in a bit of a bubble at the moment, one of the biggest I've ever seen personally, and we don't know where some of this, the crash around that happens or the backlash. So again, it's a bit of don't dive or delve too deep into it. Make sure that you're kind of really very, very, very conscious about how much you're doing the AI thing publicly, and that includes writing all your practice. There's quite a few people who've got a very strong backlash against it. Like any system where there's a large wave one way, the wave will push the other. So it's also being quite discerning around all of that. So if there's a key message about all of this, it's critical consciousness or reflection. It's about being very mindful of protecting your brand and your authentic voice. And it's also about very, very good discernment, not only around the content that you are generating yourself, the protocols that you're using to generate that content, so checking and being careful, but also the content that you're consuming. We're in a place now that people like us are able to make content much more easily. The barriers come down. So before sharing posts or commenting on posts, be mindful that the post itself is much less likely to be real than ever before. So I think that's also the other side of things. It's doing a bit of thought process around making sure that you're supporting the right things or you're following the right people. It's much easier to get scammed by as an artist than ever before. So those are some of the things we're wanting to raise as our talk. Now, in this last period of time, it's really to kind of have a bit of a discussion and see what other questions you have or what other ways that you are interested in might be used, or questions and concerns. How else can we help in terms of this process? And for those of you who are doing CNZ applications, creative community applications, or any other funding application or residency application, be very, very mindful that a lot of those places are now using AI detection systems. AI detection systems are not foolproof, particularly if you have English as a second language. They can be like, you could be just literally writing your own application and it says you're using AI. But it isn't such a good look when you're in a creative practice to have that come up red flagged. And so as we get more sophisticated with these tools, it'll be harder and harder because they'll train much more on your own voice. So you will be able to get things written that'll pretty much sound like you, with all the errors and things included if you want that. But do be mindful around that. As I said before, most of us who use it a lot, if we're seeing posts from creatives that have just been cut and pasted, it really doesn't do good things for how you come across to others. So more experimentation and human resonance I'm seeing, and yes, great. I'm glad to see that that's a benefit. So several further things. We do have workshops that we regularly do. We're doing some kind of creative technology workshop in the new year. We also do individual coaching if people are interested in that as well. And also, as part of you being part of this experience, including those who've purchased but were unable to make this particular time, we're giving you a free copy of our Strange Intelligences book, which has a lot of AI creative practice in it. We focused on AI for that particular area. And we're also, for those of you who are watching this, you will also be able to get a discount on any of the things that I just mentioned in terms of coaching, for example, as well, just because you're part of our community now. You've been inducted through the Awhi World portal into our Strange Intelligences lab. So as part of that, we'd love to keep engaging with you. We don't see people as customers, we see them as collaborators whenever you encounter us, because you're sharing our mahi now. So if there are further questions that come up, please don't hesitate to get back in touch with us. There's lots of different ways to do that, including support@awhiworld.com. Any technical issues that come up, for those of you watching it later, obviously get in touch straight away. But also we would love to hear some feedback from you. So in the next few days, we'll probably early next week at the latest, we'll send you a recording of this particular talk. And that will have a link in it for you, just very, very simple, what worked, what didn't, what could we improve. And we'd love to be able to share that so that we can do more of these talks. We've priced these workshops at a rate that's accessible and sustainable for us because we're really passionate about this. It's extremely important for anyone working in creativity right now to get some AI literacy, even at a basic level. So it's really important for us. So if it worked, please tell some people, because we'd love to do a few more of these. So any other further thoughts from Kim or Jared? Anything that I've missed today, just at the end?
Just to say thanks everyone for joining us. It's lovely to have you along, and you know, like we're always really excited to see the creative outputs that people use with these tools, and it's really nice then being able to have this opportunity to have a sense around the different ways to use them, but then the pitfalls. And I think that we'll continue to see some really amazing creative outputs as we kind of really start to distinguish between what can we add as creatives over and above what these tools can help us with.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming along. It was really exciting to share some of our knowledge, and hopefully it's been very useful, as well as give you some insight into what's possible. And AI is both really, really exciting and very, very scary, and we don't quite know what's going to pop out the other end. And I guess through our awareness, at least we can navigate that so that we don't get left behind, or we take part, or we don't get screwed over by it, and then all of the above. So yeah, hopefully we've given you some insight into it. Thank you.
Cool. All right, well, go well, everybody. May your work be of benefit to the land and the earth first and foremost, but may we always generate in a space of authenticity and something that benefits us all, ourselves and others in the world. So thank you, everyone.